Hello and welcome to my very first off-season video. We are in the middle of Worlds right now, but that doesn't mean that there's not interesting stuff that's starting to percolate behind the scenes. Now, of course, we are in the primordial soup of roster rumors, and so I don't have anything to really bring you that is concrete. But I did this video last year, and I think people really liked it. And this is a video where I basically take a look at all the LCS players and even some of the coaches that are notable, and say, hey, which one of these players or who of the players in the LCS are having contracts that are expiring this year? Because, and this is very important because maybe some of you guys are only paying attention to free agency for the first time, there are fans out there that will say things like, hey, I'm a Team Liquid fan, and maybe I think Tactical should be replaced, and so they say they should just Steve should just open up the checkbook and go get Danny. But that's not how it works, because there's contracts in place. You can't actually approach. This is the whole poaching role thing. You can't actually go approach somebody until they are out of contract, or you get permission from the team that they are signed with to talk to them, or you have some sort of discussion with the team. Regardless, what that means is that when contracts expire for certain players, and a lot of players are contracted out 2 to 3 years later, but for the players that have contracts that are expiring this year and decide not to re-sign before off-season ends or begins or whatever, the free agency window starts around November 16th of this year, that means that those players will become available. There's much more likelihood of them ending up on a different team because they get to control their own destiny, essentially. So this is the video where I'm going to talk about all those players and some of the coaches in the LCS that have that happening. Of course, this coverage is brought to you by Alienware, and I just want to say there's hopefully going to be, we'll see what gets told to me, but there's hopefully going to be some cool coverage in addition to this, just like there was last year, of roster rumors and all that stuff as we get ready for the 2022 season. So please subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet so you don't miss anything. First off, we can dive into the teams here, and the first we have is 100 Thieves, a team that made Worlds this year, and 100 Thieves has no one with a contract that's expiring this year, including their coaching staff. Everybody is either through 2022 or 2023, so if you want somebody from 100 Thieves, best of luck. You're going to have to figure out a way to do that through 100 Thieves. Next up, we have Cloud9, and they are the only team that is in this scenario, I believe. Looking at the database, the contract database, they love to lock in players for very long periods of time. I think in part because they've made very lucrative deals by trading players from their team or their organization during the offseason and making lots of money. And so for that reason, they seemingly have managed to lock in every single person through 2023. Incredibly long contracts. Again, their fate is all controlled by Jack, I guess, or Cloud9. Now we get to our very first team that actually does have some availability, which is CLG. So CLG has Broxa, Demonte, and Smoothie, who all have contracts that are expiring this year on November 16th. So if you're looking to grab one of those players, guess what? They should be available unless they resign. And I think what's interesting is a lot of people are expecting CLG to have really big changes, considering how they have struggled for so long. They now have new leadership over there with Greg at the helm, so we will see. There's a chance maybe they blow up their entire roster. Who knows what happens, but at the very least, those 3 players are able to enter free agency. On the Dignitas side, we also have 3 more players. I'll mention one of them just because people are familiar with him, but Acadian, Aframu, and Lorlo all have contracts that are ending on November 16th. It's not the only folks. They also have some academy players and stuff, but a coach. But those are obviously the very notable ones. The rest of their LCS players are contracted out for a while. On the Evil Geniuses side, we only have 1 player who is sticking around, and that is the mid laner extraordinaire, Jizuke. Now, obviously a controversial figure over the past 2 years, but I think he had a very incredible summer split, so I'm hoping he does not disappear, even though, I don't know, you could see some people just deciding not to pick him up or something like that, but I think he's a great player, so I hope he sticks around. But at the very least, he could be hitting free agency on November 16th. Moving right along, we have Flyquest. Flyquest has no one that can hit free agency. I guess on the academy side they have Triple and Dreams, but for the most part, none of their LCS players. Golden Guardians similar situation, no one. all their staff and players are locked in, mostly through 2023, but a couple of folks through 2022. So that is, we're not seeing too much movement there potentially, unless they decide to make something. Immortals. So here's an interesting note. As we record this, none of their players are available to hit free agency this year. But we have seen on Twitter that Insanity has said that he's been given permission to look for opportunities. So take that as you will, but technically still contracted. Additionally, we know that Dardoch can look. I think he's looking to return to become a player. A person who has been on many LCS teams before might be looking to join something over in Europe, but for the moment, he is a coach whose contract is ending this year through Immortals. Team Liquid. So I know there's been a lot of discussion about team fans wanting Team Liquid players to all stick around, and one of those players, at the very least, controls their own destiny, and that is Santorin. Santorin's contract is expiring on November 16th, as all the contracts are that are expiring this year. So I don't know. Will he resign with Team Liquid? Let me know in the comments. You make your own prediction. Also, interestingly, on the Team Liquid side, Academy players Dokla and Jenkins. I just want to call those out because obviously they're two players that a lot of people are familiar with. We saw Jenkins play this year. Maybe there's an opportunity for them to go someplace else or get picked up. I mean, I think people felt like Jenkins had a pretty decent run and could potentially be a good starter in the LCS for another team. So perhaps Jenkins will decide to hit free agency this year. And then on the coaching side for Team Liquid, Cold, who stepped into the main coach role, head coach role after Jat departed this year. He's also in a situation where his contract is expiring. So will he resign? We don't know. TSM. All right. So TSM LCS players are all contracted through 2022 or 2023. But similar to the Insanity situation, we saw a PoE tweet that he's able to look for stuff. Now, obviously, a lot of people are speculating that this means that Bjergsen is going to be stepping back into the mid lane role, and there's been some reports that that is the situation. I still don't hear that that is like a 100% thing. I don't think it's a done deal yet, and I wouldn't necessarily assume that just because PoE has tweeted that he can look for opportunities and is not actually available on the contract thing, or to hit free agency this year, I don't necessarily mean that that means that Bjergsen's going to be, in part because Bjergsen, on the coaching side, his contract with TSM is actually ending this year. So he's not automatically attached to TSM past November 16th unless he decides to do that. He controls his own fate. And in the past, there's been a lot of times where people have been disappointed that Bjergsen did not hit free agency, if only because it might mean that he could command a higher value. This happened, I think, back in 2019. That was when they negotiated the equity thing. And I know some people are saying, wait, he has equity in TSM, and I'm not going to necessarily explain that for the people that don't understand it. You can go Google. There's a bunch of articles that have happened. But when Riot created the ability for players to get equity in teams, which is, again, I think in 2019, there's definitely some language in there, from my understanding, that allows them to perhaps get back some of the value from that equity or whatever. So I wouldn't say anything's assumed until we see the information on this update to say that he is re-signed. Because guess what? If it's a done deal, then they can sign it right now and submit it to Riot, from my understanding, and the extension can occur before he hits free agency. So we will see. Also on the TSM side, Coach Curry, who I think a lot of TSM fans are familiar with, his contract is expiring this year, and Peter Zhang as well. Peter Zhang. So on the coaching staff, there could be some pretty big mix-ups, or change-ups, I guess, if Bjergsen decides not to coach, and we see two other coaches leave. Kays is the only one that is contracted through 2022, beyond 2021. So that is what is up for this year. Nothing too crazy, but again, just because a player or a coach is not on this list does not necessarily mean that they won't be moving teams. In fact, I expect that there will still be a lot of motion this year. Quite frankly, hopefully not as much as we had last year, because I think it's not great for the league when you have like dramatic musical chairs that are being played among all the different teams. But here's your list of potential suspects before we even hit the rumor time for all the other players. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. Thank you so much to Alienware, and we'll catch you next time. Bigger, better, cooler. That is how I would describe North America's performance now that Cloud9 has officially made it out, and who knows who else will be after I film this outro. But it's also the exact way that you can describe the new Alienware Aurora that has released in celebration of Alienware's 25th anniversary. This thing looks amazing. It's an evolution of their legendary design that you may have seen before you've checked out their stuff. It's fantastic. It's just so neat to see what they are doing over there with this new setup. It's just so beautiful. So anyway, I'd love it if you guys could go check out the new Alienware Aurora. You can do so at alienware.com/Travis. There's a link in the description below, and use my code. And yeah, it's going to be fantastic.